Hey there, Mark Brown. I've been thinking about this. Let's do something a little different. You and I talked about
Ooh,
it, but on this episode, let's actually do like a live brainstorming.
ooh.
Thanksgiving is here today. Let's have
Mhm.
a live brainstorming because there's so much potential stories right at your fingertips that we
Yep.
don't want you to miss this.
Anyone can give a presentation. Few deliver unforgettable presentations. What's the difference? You're about to find out. Welcome to the Unforgettable Presentations Podcasts with your hosts, world champion speakers and coaches Mark Brown.
Your life tells a story, and there's someone out there who needs to hear it.
And Darren LaCroix.
Stage time, stage time, stage time.
Ready for some powerful presentation ahas? Let's dive right in.
All right, Mark. So we were talking about this. Let's do this. This is like live without a net.
And I'm not a circus act.
Yeah, amen. But there's in the United States, those of you outside the United States, you probably have heard about our holiday Thanksgiving. It's a one time, it's not a religious holiday. It's just a time to give thanks. So a lot of families gather. Some do, some don't, but a lot of them do. And it's just a great day. It's not like you have to bring gifts. So there's the stress of, did I get the right gift? Are they going to, no, it's about getting together, family, memories. And this is one of the key things that there are some gold. You know, we talk about getting coached, which is powerful. But what if you, Mark, and we did live without a net, you didn't even run this by you. What if you deputized your family as your coach? Literally,
Deputize your family.
yeah,
Explain for us, Darren.
literally have them hire them without paying them to help relive some of the memories growing up. Maybe it's the memory of last Thanksgiving when Uncle Bob's wig fell in the soup. You know?
Your piece. I
when
love it. I love it.
watching the football game and the sound went out and what you did, or you lost electricity. Like, what are some of those past Thanksgiving memories? What are those stories that you always tell that
Mm.
could be transformed into a powerful point? And here's why: the relatability factor. Especially if you're doing a keynote in Thanksgiving, if you're outside of the United States, then you can refer back to it or frame it however it works for you. But in the United States, we all know Thanksgiving. So if you had a Thanksgiving story, or if it's a story about just the past, or even if it's a story about Christmas or Hanukkah or um, Kwanzaa, like whatever that is, like, but it's Thanksgiving is a special, unique time because you have all these memories. We talk about things. So Mark and I today wanted to really put on your radar screen the stories that are bubbling around you, to be able to grab them, capture them, put a little note, put a voice text on your phone, capture it. This is a critical time to capture capture what captures you. So while you're at the Thanksgiving dinner or family or friend gathering, listen up, and maybe you could even ask them if they have some fun stories that they could
Right.
share, or fun or powerful stories, but literally let them help you.
Yeah. And the cool thing is just say, hey, listen, Aunt Joan, tell us again about the time when. And you'll see people begin to tune in and pay attention. They're telling you a story, a memory that could be gold for you. So, really, the idea of deputizing your family as your coach is part of a process which includes what I call mine your memories. You mine the
Ooh.
memories, not only yours, I say mine the memories, because it's the memories of your family, an entire group. It is a collaborative process whereby everyone's memories that you can bring in will be so unique to your family. And when you have everyone's memories being brought in, here's a cool thing. We often think of what uncle did, or aunt this, or grandma or pop. But sometimes the kids, the teenagers in the family, will tell you something they remember, and you go, oh, wow, I had forgotten about that. You know that because here you have a story which can be applicable not only for adult audiences, but maybe in a youth group with the YMCA, a local boys and girls club, but any audience members that are in that demographic can relate to that story. So keep your ears wide open, mind the memories, and deputize your family as your coach. Make note of those things. And you know what, Darren? Events like American Thanksgiving, there are other events where people get together around the world and they meet with family. And it's a golden opportunity, in my opinion, to draw on the wisdom of the more mature family members, those who are older, those who may have gone through a difficult economic time in their country, in their situation. Maybe they saw some conflict and they were pretty close to it, and how it shaped them and their love for their family and the concern they have for you as one of their descendants. I mean, there's so much there in just having a conversation with people in your family whom you don't see that often. But this could be a prime time to deputize your family, to mine some memories and unearth some new material that you never knew was there.
Yeah, Mark, and you brought up something with the youth. If there's youth in the room, ask them. They are going to tell you more, let's say, raw and real
Honesty.
Their honesty can be huge. So whether it's the elders in the family and friends zone or the kids in the family and friends zone, you will get some great ideas. And also keep in mind that you may remember a story, but here's a clue. They remember it differently. They may remember some different facts or have a different perspective from you that might just make it gold. Gold, Jerry. There's gold there, Jerry.
Gold in them, their hills.
So we're really trying to emphasize that Thanksgiving, you want to give thanks and ask people, what are they thankful for? When they go around the table, if you do that like our family does, what is brought up? And could that be a story? Could that be a story? That's why I want you to remember, could that be a story? Could that be a story? And when we say capture what captures you, whether it's on your phone, which obviously would be a little more convenient than carrying a pad of Post-its, family gathering, but hey, whatever works for you.
Voice note, man, voice note.
But capture the details. This isn't about telling the story, it's about capturing the details that will help you tell the story. And Mark, I think this is a great Mark principle for an occasion like this, which is the Mark version of best, worst, last, and first. So even if you want to bring up a conversation, hey, what was the best holiday we had? Or what was the worst memory? What do you remember about your first time with this family? If there's someone who married into the family, ask them about their first time coming to the family event, because again, it's relatable. Now, we need to make a solid point that helps prove our premise, but there's just so much here, and we want you to capture the gold. Mark?
That is, I'll be honest here. We're doing this live, right? We're recording, we didn't rehearse this, we didn't plan this. We talk about that first time. I have older children. Those who know me know my youngest is 28 years old, okay? I've got one who's 36 who's here for Thanksgiving with his girlfriend for the first time. My daughter with her husband several times now. They're married since 2020 in the pandemic. But the first time he came with her for Thanksgiving, that means more to me personally than you would ever imagine, Darren. I'm glad you brought it up, because there's two pieces to this I want to look at. There may be more, but there's two I want to look at. One is having someone come to your home for their first Thanksgiving as the boyfriend or the girlfriend. And as you said it, Darren, I began to have stories roll around my head. My daughter's husband, he was here for Christmas one time. We were playing basketball outside. He popped his Achilles in my front yard playing basketball under the hoop in my driveway. I mean, Right? Yeah, sure. Welcome to our family, son. Right? So it's memories of those who are coming to your house for the first time. But what do you recall about your first Thanksgiving with your in-laws or your significant other's family? What was that like? What memory does that draw up? And what story have you never told from that experience?
And again, capture the details. When I was even talking about that, it reminded me of my grandfather on the Polish side. He was just this amazing man, loving man, just salt of the earth, great guy. Everyone loved him. Hard worker, had these forearms like Popeye because he was such a hard worker. Forearms like Popeye, detail.
Yep.
And I was reminded that like he loved wrestling, back in the days of Chief Strongbow and Jesse the Body Ventura.
Yeah, Rocky Johnson, those guys, yeah.
Yeah, even before that, like the classic Andre the Giant.
Andre the Giant, yep.
And he was just this amazing, but he just, wrestling, not real, but he didn't care. He was so into it. And I remember someone brought up, one of the funny relatives brought up, he would always be just mesmerized and he would just go, wow. Like that's how he said it. Wow. But a detail like that can bring a character to life and make your story vibrant. So that's why we say, capture the details. The great grandpa said, wow. Like you don't have to write it all out. This is not the time to create the story. This is a time to capture details and the stories that later on you can come to one of our boot camps and work it out.
So you mean his laugh was like his wow was like your aunt's laughing in stereo?
Yes. And that's another one too that I put in my book, and when I tell the story of being 8 years old at the kids' table. When I say 8 years old at the kids' table, by the way, if you're going to a home that you've always gone to, take note of the details. Be more aware, because whenever I tell that story and I talk about, I was at the kids' table, the rickety card table.
Yeah.
Boom. People can relate. And that's the power of the story. When you tap into a memory, a strong memory of someone, they're going to go with you on the story because you're relating it directly to their life. So what do you see? Was there always the grandpa's favorite red candle, or grandma's, when I think of my grandmother, I think of her cutting strawberries over the sink because she would grow strawberries in her own garden. I think of my cousins and I when we were in the tricycle age, that they had a bunch of tricycles and they had this big driveway, and we'd always just be tooling around. And, the older relatives, my brother and sister, they were too cool for that because we were in tricycle stage, So there's interesting dynamics. That was the doing lip sync concerts in my grandmother's bedroom where we set up the drum kit, like the pillows and everything.
Yeah.
Fun. And it's just like things like that are relatable. Okay, what's the story? And again, you can figure that out later. But I'm willing to bet that if you really listen and then you ask some questions, they're there, they're open. They probably know you're a speaker, and just ask them, hey, you don't even have to say, hey, I'm working on finding stories. Just say, ask questions. Hey, what do you remember from, like you said, if the boyfriend comes for the first time, but now they're married for 10 years, what do they remember about their first, their best, their worst, their last, their first? Anyway, it's so content rich. It's so story rich. But if we don't capture it, we're not going to probably talk about it until next Thanksgiving.
It's funny. I'm chuckling now because you talked about being on the tricycles, tooling around in the driveway, having lip sync concerts in your grandmother's bedroom with the pillows being the drums. I have known you for over 20 years, Darren LaCroix. I've never heard those stories before, right? And the thing is, just having this conversation is eliciting these memories for Darren. And for me, of my now son-in-law popping his Achilles in my driveway playing basketball, and there is so much beauty in recalling these kinds of events. And there's one more too. What happens is having these conversations can be triggers for you. Because right now, what this discussion has triggered for me, Darren, is a time my daughter and her husband and my son all came from the DC, Virginia area down here to Georgia for my wife's birthday, and they surprised her. So I went off to the store to buy groceries and some supplies for dinner, and I ended up going to Macon Airport. I picked them up. We put in the driveway. My younger son, David, was living at the time with us, and he had his camera ready. And we opened the door, and my wife saw her daughter, her and her boyfriend. She saw my son, and she said, "Oh, I'm gonna have a heart attack. Oh my gosh." And the look on her face, surprise birthday get together for mom, that was precious and priceless. Now, as we talk about this, can you recall maybe the surprise celebration that your family may have had, you're thankful for, the reactions, the responses? Think about all of these events in our lives hold gold. They need to be told.
Hold
These
gold,
events
hold.
hold gold.
That's
and
bold.
they need to be told. They shouldn't grow mold. Okay.
Cool. Cool.
They shouldn't grow mold. They need to be told. Okay.
You just elicited emotion.
Yeah, I know. I didn't plan that though, because gold and the mold are opposites here. The contrast is key. But think about that. As we're having this spontaneous brainstorming live for you, our friends and loved ones, we're now in our own lives recalling some of these memories and sharing them with you for the first time. I've never told that in any speech, but just having the conversation. So when Darren says, just ask questions, have conversations, their memories come flooding out, and they may also, bonus, trigger memories of your own experience when you were younger that you may have not tapped into. So the idea of having your family deputized is more than just having them tell you stories. It's great, but the bonus is it'll also help trigger for you memories you may have long placed on the back burner, and something they say, an image they recall, a toy they bring up. Oh my God, when I was 7, I had one of those. And I never knew that Darren LaCroix rode a tricycle. So there you go. You never know what can come from drawing these out. And the bigger bonus from my perspective is this. When you draw on all these memories, you will trigger memories in your audience as well. You'll open up their mind, their thinking. And if you happen to address other presenters, you're giving them fuel to go back and say, oh, I'd let that lie for a long time. I need to rediscover this. There is beauty. There is beauty. We got to hold the gold. Don't make it turn to mold. The story needs to be told. I'll stop there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So many memories are bubbling up, and we hope most importantly they are for you. And it gives you better questions. And I really honestly believe if you ask the elder and the youngsters in your family, you're actually going to learn something about them and their perspective.
Oh, they think,
because it may be a little story you forgot about, but to them, it was a memory. To them, it stood out. To them, it was unforgettable. So here's the cool part. The youngster gets to talk and everyone's listening. The elder gets to talk and they're reliving their favorite memories. You just held them up and let them be loved because they were heard. And when, the couple of memories that came up for me, Mark, like you had said, when I tell the story of the 8-year-old table, when I describe it, going back to my youth, when I hushed my own audience, I created the image of the laughter, my cousin having everybody laughing and enjoy, recapping Saturday Night Live skits and Steve Martin. In fact, my aunts, I have twin aunts and they laugh in harmony. Waff, 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 waff. And when I even if one-on-one conversations, when I describe that and do that with my hands, I'm doing waff, waff, waff with my hands, everyone smiles because they've been around someone, the relatability factor, with an infectious laugh. But the twins give it a visual, and it's also the truth. That's how I think of it. That's how I remember it. And then another one, Mark, you've never heard about this either. My mom, again, think of food. what food stories? Because there's always that. And oh, by the way, the young man who came in second this past year at the World Championship, he told a story about food and tradition and holidays. So it triggered, I had thought of that, Mark, when you and I were talking on the phone this morning prior to the podcast recording. But I remembered my mom and dad, we were driving to my grandmother's house, not necessarily over the river and through the woods, but
there you go. Ding, ding,
through
ding,
the
ding.
woods.
Okay.
We weren't on a horse-drawn sleigh. We were in a little tan Subaru. They had just gotten it brand new. And my mom is known for her chocolate cream pie.
Ooh, chocolate cream pie.
Cream pie. That was one of, and my grandma made a chocolate roll. That was amazing. But we were driving over there. Mom was in the front seat. Dad was driving, and they were in an accident. And so the chocolate cream pie went like everywhere and all over my mom. She was holding it and then went to, I know they were rushed by the ambulance to the hospital. I mean, they were okay. They were okay, a little shocked and stunned. But I remember the power of humor and edifying that one of the emergency care workers said, "How's that chocolate cream pie lady doing?"
Wow.
And it was just a little bit of levity in a tough, traumatic situation that probably made my mom smile, because she came back after she was checked out and told us about it. It meant something to her, that chocolate cream pie lady. And it was almost like a prideful thing, not pride in a bad way, but like she was noticed. And so there's an example right there that I could develop that into a story if it's going to fit one of my premises.
Not only that, Darren, this individual used a technique with an identifier as a name, a technique you have been teaching for years. How can we see a character more meaningfully? And the chocolate cream pie lady, officer friendly. And sometimes you give the character a name by which you identify what they do, and it makes them memorable. And you can really massage that as part of your story, and that's really cool. I wrote down here, let's focus on the food and what it represents, these events. And it's generally joyful. Now, I do have an idea, Darren, that, may seem to some to be a bit of a downer, but it doesn't have to be. Because, even in his speech, our friend Alex Matt, who was number 2 in the world, talked about the annual tradition that they have and those who had left. And I know at times when we have our Thanksgiving and family get-togethers, there are memories of those who were here last year, but who are not here this year. And the memories for me have been just wonderful blessings. In the same way we say, oh, it's baby's first Thanksgiving, and we have the celebration, we get a nice costume, the baby has no clue why we do it. Right? So we can celebrate those who have left their imprint on our families, who are no longer with us. And we can also celebrate those who are with us for the first time. Maybe it is a new baby. Maybe it is the newlywed, the new husband, the new wife, the new spouse who was in with the family for the first time at that particular get-together. So there's so many opportunities there to talk about the relationships, the passage of time, the memories that we have of those who have gone before, the blessings that they were to us, and how we have tried to be like them. And, we don't normally promote, other people's programs or speeches as much, but because he mentioned Alexander Matt, if you look at his presentation at the Toastmasters conference or contest, you will see in 7 minutes, he really does much of what we're talking about right now around one particular day. And you'll see just a glimpse and a taste, pun intended, a taste, right? Like no baked cake.
Oh boy. I wasn't ready with my ring.
I know, I'll give you a chance to find it.
There you go.
A taste of what you can provide as you draw upon these memories, even of those who have gone before, the fun memories, the jokes you had, the fun time you had. It need not be a sad, down part of experience. It could be a real blessing. It can be joyful as well. And also the anticipation of the years to come, of new members of the family and the children who are coming up. It's just a wonderful season and time to see the stories of the individuals who are in the room and to be thankful for the blessing of being in that room with them, because that's what being together as family is really all about, and being thankful during a season of Thanksgiving, despite how difficult things have been. And I don't want to belabor again what may seem like negative. But you look at what has the family been through over the last year? How have you had to be strong together to encourage each other when somebody had a loss or somebody lost their job? What was it like as a family? And you're all there together, and the memory of how you held each other up, that can be so inspiring and so beautiful. There is so much we can draw from and eventually share from our Thanksgiving experiences.
Yeah, and look at the traditions you have. If it's watching a football game, what goes along with that football game? Is there popcorn? Is there, like, my sister makes this unbelievable dip. It's so simple, it's so easy, and yet it's so good. Like, what's around the things you do together? What's that tradition that might be a story? And Mark, I was also thinking about this. If you went around the table or one-on-one conversations, just asking, let's just say you lost someone, or even if they're there, it might even be better if they're there, grandpa, grandma, great grandpa, great grandma, and go around the table and ask, what did you learn from them? And then tell me about that story. So now you're asking for the lesson, but you're asking for the story around when you learned it. So not just memories, but if you ask for a memory, that's going to trigger part of the brain. If you ask for a lesson, that's going to trigger a different part of the brain. And now you have the lesson learned. And what's cool, Mark, is it will probably come out in dialogue.
It should, actually. It's better that way.
Yeah, which is what we teach on how to tell stories. So if you trigger the dialogue, then boom, you're there. Your story is 60, 70% there. Now let's just work around it. And then they'll give you the story that goes with it. If you're going around with permission, you might even turn on the recorder and just capture all of it. And then you have it as a keepsake for future, to pass on to the kids or the grandkids.
I'm glad you mentioned food earlier and tradition. Be aware that some experiences are so close to you, you may not realize the significance. And Darren, we said focus on the food. You mentioned what's our normal dish, and we mentioned Alexander's grandmother's no great bake cake. And I realized one of our traditions when the kids come home is they're going to come. They always come home early, they come home 3 days early, whatever, a few days early. But one of our traditions around Thanksgiving and Christmas here in the Brown household is that when they get off the plane, if they fly down from DC, or when they get out of the car, they drive the several hours down and they get refreshed, what awaits them every single time is tacos that my wife Andrea makes. It has been a tradition for years. She'll make a mess of tacos, soft tacos, hard tacos, brown turkey, tomatoes, lettuce, spices. I mean, this is the thing. And our kids will devour 25 tacos. I may have one, maybe two, but just watching them do that is part of the experience of the tradition that our family has at these times. So the other piece is, as you said, Darren, what are notable, specific traditional practices that your family has? I know here in North America, American Thanksgiving, we're going to watch football. Of course, my son and I watch English football, but that's okay. But are there other unique experiences, unique practices? You all go for a family walk, 10 people down the street together. I don't know. What do you normally do that nobody else does? And what happens during that activity? We have done the bowling thing, but the walking is really interesting because we may have 8 of us going for a walk, and Darren will walk for half an hour more. And what always happens is this: before long, you'll see 2 together or 3 together. My wife and my son-in-law will be talking to each other. My daughter and I, my princess and her puppies, will have our conversation. My brother and my son, his brother and his girlfriend will hang out together. It's really, really interesting and how dynamic goes. And there may be those activities that you and your family participate in that you never thought what it was like. But think about this. If you do the family walk and you do break up into groups, have you ever looked back and said, oh, I'm so happy to see those two talking together. It's great. But there is so much here when you brainstorm and drill down deep. And I would dare say, Darren, that just this idea of what we can do looking at a family holiday or tradition, we can draw so much material from that experience. We could fill, I don't know, 3 or 4 with him on the stories. The key is, though, to capture the photographs, the video, the sound bites, and enhance your story folder, not the story file, your story folder, and use the material when it's appropriate. And I love the idea of finding the lesson first and then enhance the story around the lesson. That's the goal right there.
Yeah, and if you're at your grandparents' home or the home where you do these holidays, take some pictures. Take some pictures of the way the table's set, of the gravy bowl that brings you where you watch football, because that could be used to help reinforce the story and set the mood. But it's yours. It's your custom visual as we teach.
And Darren, you said, looking around the room, it occurred to me just now, isn't it true, for the most part, when you have these get-togethers, certain individuals will sit in certain spots, not at the dining table, when you're casual, in front of the TV. That recliner, that's going to be Bob's, right? This chair and that blanket, my wife has a bunch of blankets in a wonderful little hassock in our sitting room. And the Snuggie is hers. That's a blanket with arms called a Snuggie. If you don't know what it is, Google it, right? And there's one that has Manchester United on it. That's going to be my blanket. It's who sits where, who has what. And these traditions almost evolve organically. No one says, I will claim that seat. But every year they go to that.
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows. And who claims the remote? We all know who was the keeper of the remote, right? It's just really, do they bring certain games to play? My kids bring board games. We actually do board games at these events. I mean, having a conversation, Darren, and having brainstorm, I'm thinking, I don't talk about all of these things and what they mean for us. But I have to now apply my own advice to myself and say, look, Mark, you really have a lot that you can use in your presentations. And anyone who knows me knows there's hardly ever any talk I give where my family is not mentioned. Even if I'm doing corporate leadership, at some point, I bring my family in. That's just who I am. And I have now even more to draw on to share with my audiences. And I believe you will too, if you're willing to look at the holidays through a different lens and find out what you can glean, and then you can then share. Because these holiday experiences, they hold the gold. They must not grow mold. The stories must be told.
Mark, I think you said it perfectly. You wrapped it up well, and we want to let you get to Thanksgiving dinner, breakfast, football, whatever it is for you, but capture the gold. Join us next week, and we're going to talk about some casual things that are costing you cash.
Hey there, this is Darren LaCroix. Thanks for checking out this podcast episode on YouTube. If you want all of them, not every one is on YouTube, check out your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss an episode. Keep being a sponge so you can be unforgettable.
Check out StageTimeUniversity.com, where good presenters become unforgettable.